Kabuki Content Fighter, released in 1990 by Human Entertainment and HL America, was my very first NES game. But wait, I've only had this for about a month. I only had my NES about a month as well. Anyway, I bought this for an NES that I was fixing up because I couldn't really find much else. And now that the NES is working tip-top, I figured I may as well use it and review this game. If you're curious and want to see more about that NES, then check out these two kinda boring and long-winded videos. I also wrote a post about it on my website, retrogameon.com. Anyway, let's see if this test game works, and play it. In Kabuki Content Fighter, you play as one Colonel Scott O'Connor. O'Connor is the usual army badass you'd expect on the NES, and the city he lives in has a computer that controls everything, including the nuclear arsenal. Like your mum's Windows Vista computer that she refuses to upgrade or protect in any way whatsoever, a virus infects it, causing all sorts of havoc, ensuring that the world is in trouble. Instead of knocking it out with a patched and upgraded version of Tran Micro, however, the Colonel instead bravely volunteers to be put in a machine, be converted into binary, and fight the virus Tron style. For whatever reason, on arriving in the computer, the Colonel transforms into a Kabuki actor, since his ancestor was one. I don't really understand the reasons behind this, but it now means you can attack enemies by headbanging, so I guess it was worth it. It's a pretty far out story, and the Japanese version is actually a tie-in for the also Japanese movie called Zapani. However, this was tweaked and changed for Western audiences since they'd likely not know of the movie. As you can imagine, this game is a 2D action platformer. You have access to a bunch of different weapons which are gradually unlocked as you progress, and you jump and fight your way through every level and boss fight. Pretty standard issue really, much like the Colonel's boots, with the one game-defining mechanic being that there are these floating platforms you can grab onto and boost jump off in different directions. So really, not the most exciting gameplay to begin with, and sadly the controls and hit detection are a bit off. The jumping is a bit floaty, which can cause problems like when trying to shoot enemies, but my main issue was how inconsistent the grabbable platforms were. The boost sometimes would simply not work, and you'd fall instead of jumping towards another platform or the next part of the level. This sucks, since it's really all the game had going for it to stand out besides from the zany storyline, and it really made it frustrating to play at times. The level design works a bit against you too, as sometimes the game will deliberately drop you onto hazards reducing your health, or enemies will suddenly appear out of the game screen catching you by surprise. This means that memorization is required if you don't want to get caught out by the game's little traps, which is a technique I'm not a fan of to make a game longer. Looking beyond that though, there are plenty of different enemies that have independent patterns to memorize if you want to live. That was one thing I did like about this game, since it constantly kept you on your toes and all the different enemies are cool to look at. Check out this cool guy with his sunnies for instance. Sick one, dude. Another thing I didn't like though, was that once you kill an enemy but move out of the area but then return, the enemies will respawn. This was a royal pain in my behind, and it was even worse since you only have so much time in each level to complete it. While not a particularly hard game as far as the gameplay is concerned, even though you can be fighting against the game mechanics and only have limited time, I don't think Human Entertainment wanted anyone to finish their game. For one, there is not unlimited continues. This is fine in itself, all games can't give you a free ticket, but Kabuki Content Fighter has no save system or passwords either. It wants you to play this in one go, and considering how many blocks of health I lost to plain old bullshit thanks to the somewhat broken jumping grabbing system, I think this is a bit too much to ask. I'm a little bit ashamed to say, please don't judge me for it, but I used a level select cheat while playing this, playing it over 2 sessions instead. No way in hell was I committing to playing this in one go without unlimited continues, not for this game. If you're looking down on me right now and think I'm an inferior gamer, then that's okay, but keep in mind that entering the cheat code is a challenging game in itself. It's a simple if long combination that must be entered at the start screen, but the problem is that it must be entered on another controller plugged into the second port. I only have one controller, so I had to press start at the intro cutscene and quickly plug the controller into port 2, import the code, and quickly plug it back into port 1. The start screen is only on screen for maybe 15 seconds, and the cheat code consists of 28 button pushes, so it's a bit of a mad rush. However, I didn't use any other cheat codes to play this game, I promise. The visual style is a bit weird here. I'm not really sure what to make of it. Some levels look futuristic and shiny, what do you expect from the inside of an early 90s computer, but others were an ugly mush of brown and other such colours. Besides from looking awful, it also impacted gameplay as important things to see such as projectiles and platforms would sometimes merge into the background. Over that, there was confusion as there are platforms and pylons drawn in that aren't actually solid, so sometimes in the heat of traversing the level and killing enemies, you try and jump from a platform that wasn't actually there. The music wasn't that bad, and I did find it getting stuck in my head, which must mean something.
If I was going to be nitpicky, I'd point out that it was a bit repetitive at times, but otherwise I'd say it was passable. The sound effects are pretty basic, which is understandable for an 8-bit system, but they weren't annoying except for this. Yeah, but otherwise I don't have many complaints.
There you have it, folks, my first NES game review. I don't know why it took me so long to get an NES that wasn't Japanese, but better late than never, I guess. Next up, a Master System and a Sega Saturn. Hopefully. Sadly, Kabuki Quantum Fighter isn't the best game ever, but it did help me repair that broken NES. So, you kinda suck, but thank you for helping.
Hey Retro Gamers, and thank you so much for watching. Recently on RetroGameOne.com, I've written about a few things in my retro gaming world that may interest you. For one, I talk about some pirated Famicom cartridges I accidentally bought and try to find out about their origins. Also, I visit a retro gaming museum and arcade called Nostalgia Box in my home city of Perth, where I give a full review and talk about my experience. If you want to check out those posts and about 250 odd more, then click the Retro Game On icon on screen now, or click the link in the description. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.